The Jin dynasty, officially known as the Great Jin, lasted from 1115 to 1234 as one of the last dynasties in Chinese history to predate the Mongol conquest of China. Its name is sometimes written as Qin, Jurchen Jin or Jin in English to differentiate it from an earlier Jin dynasty of China whose name is identical when transcribed without tone marker diacritics in the Hanyu pinyin system for Standard Chinese. It is also sometimes called the Jurchen dynasty or the Jurchen Jin, because its founding leader Aguda was of Wanyan Jurchen descent. The Jin emerged from Taizu's rebellion against the Liao dynasty, which held sway over northern China until the nascent Jin drove the Liao to the western regions, where they became known as the Western Liao. After vanquishing the Liao, the Jin launched a century-long campaign against the Han-led Song dynasty, which was based in southern China. Over the course of their rule, the Jurchens of Jin quickly adapted to Chinese customs, and even fortified the Great Wall against the rising Mongols. Domestically, the Jin oversaw a number of cultural advancements, such as the revival of Confucianism. After spending centuries as vassals of the Jin, the Mongols invaded under Genghis Khan in 1211 and inflicted catastrophic defeats on the Jin armies. After numerous defeats, revolts, defections, and coups, they succumbed to Mongol conquest 23 years later in 1234. History. Origin. By the 11th century, the Jurchens had become vassals of the Khitan rulers of the Liao dynasty. The Jurchens in the Yalu River region had been tributaries of Goryeo since the reign of Wang Jian, who called upon them during the wars of the later Three Kingdoms period, but the Jurchens switched allegiance between Liao and Goryeo multiple times out of expedience. They offered tribute to both courts out of political necessity and the attraction of material benefits. One of the causes of the Jurchen rebellion and the fall of the Liao was the custom of raping married Jurchen women and Jurchen girls by Khitan envoys, which caused resentment from the Jurchens. The custom of having sex with unmarried girls by Khitan was itself not a problem, since the Jurchens were treated to guest prostitutes by their Jurchen hosts. The practice of guest prostitution, giving female companions food and shelter to guests, was common among Jurchens. Unmarried daughters of Jurchen families of lower and middle classes in Jurchen villages were provided to Khitan messengers for sex, as recorded by Hong Hao. Song envoys among the Jin were similarly entertained by singing girls in Guide, Henan. There is no evidence that guest prostitution of unmarried Jurchen girls to Khitan men was resented by the Jurchens. It was only when the Khitans forced aristocratic Jurchen families to give up their beautiful wives as guest prostitutes to Khitan messengers that the Jurchens became resentful. This suggests that in Jurchen upper classes, only a husband had the right to his married wife, while among lower-class Jurchens, the virginity of unmarried girls and sex with Khitan men did not impede their ability to marry later. Wanyan Aguda. The Jin dynasty was created in modern Jilin and Heilongjiang by the Jurchen tribal chieftain Aguda in 1115. According to tradition, Aguda was a descendant of Hanpu. Aguda adopted the term for gold as the name of his state, itself a translation of Anshuwu River, which meant golden in Jurchen. This river, known as Alaishuk in Chinese, was a tributary of the Songhua River east of Harbin. The Jurchen's early rulers were the Khitan-led Liao dynasty, which had held sway over modern North and Northeast China and the Mongolian Plateau, for several centuries. Song princesses committed suicide to avoid rape or were killed for resisting rape by the Jin. In 1121, the Jurchens entered into the alliance conducted at sea with the Han-led Northern Song dynasty and agreed to jointly invade the Liao dynasty. While the Song armies faltered, the Jurchens succeeded in driving the Liao to Central Asia. In 1125, after the death of Aguda, the Jin dynasty broke its alliance with the Song dynasty and invaded North China. When the Song dynasty reclaimed the Han-populated 16 prefectures, they were fiercely resisted by the Han Chinese population there who had previously been under Liao rule, while when the Jurchens invaded that area, the Han Chinese did not oppose them at all and handed over the southern capital to them. The Jurchens were supported by the anti-Song, Beijing-based noble Han clans. The Han Chinese who worked for the Liao were viewed as hostile enemies by the Song dynasty. Song Han Chinese also defected to the Jin. One crucial mistake that the Song made during this joint attack was the removal of the defensive forest it originally built along the Song-Liao border. Because of the removal of this landscape barrier, in 1126-27, the Jin army marched quickly across the North China plain to Bianjing. On January 9, 1127, the Jurchens ransacked Kaifeng, the capital of the Northern Song dynasty, capturing both Emperor Xuanzong and his father, Emperor Huizong, who had abdicated in panic in the face of the Jin invasion. Following the fall of Bianjing, the succeeding Southern Song dynasty continued to fight the Jin dynasty for over a decade, eventually signing the Treaty of Shaoxing in 1141, which called for the cession of all Song territories north of the Huai River to the Jin dynasty and the execution of Song General Yue Fei in return for peace. The peace treaty was formally ratified on October 11, 1142 when a Jin envoy visited the Song court. Having conquered Kaifeng and occupied North China, the Jin later deliberately chose earth as its dynastic element and yellow as its royal color. According to the theory of the five elements, the earth element follows the fire, the dynastic element of the Song, and the sequence of elemental creation. Therefore, this ideological move shows that the Jin regarded the Song reign of China was officially over and themselves as the rightful ruler of China proper. Migration south. After taking over northern China, the Jin dynasty became increasingly Sinicized. About 3 million people, half of them Jurchens, migrated south into northern China over 2 decades, and this minority governed about 30 million people. The Jurchens were given land grants and organized into hereditary military units. 300 households formed a Mook and 7 to 10 Mooks formed a Mengan. Many married Han Chinese, although the ban on Jurchen nobles marrying Han Chinese was not lifted until 1191. After Emperor Taizong died in 1135, the next 3 Jin emperors were grandsons of Aguda by 3 different princes. Emperor Zizong studied the classics and wrote Chinese poetry. He adopted Han Chinese cultural traditions, but the Jurchen nobles had the top positions. Later in life, Emperor Zizong became an alcoholic and executed many officials for criticizing him. He also had Jurchen leaders who opposed him murdered, even those in the Wanyan clan. In 1149 he was murdered by a cabal of relatives and nobles, who made his cousin Wanyan Liang the next Jin emperor. Because of the brutality of both his domestic and foreign policy, Wanyan Liang was posthumously demoted from the position of emperor. Consequently, historians have commonly referred to him by the posthumous name Prince of Hailing. Rebellions in the north. Having usurped the throne, Wanyan Liang embarked on the program of legitimizing his rule as an emperor of China. In 1153, he moved the empire's main capital from Huining Prefecture to the former Liao capital, Yanjing. 4 years later, in 1157, to emphasize the permanence of the move, he raised the nobles' residences in Huining Prefecture. Wanyan Liang also reconstructed the former Song capital, Bianjing, which had been sacked in 1127, making it the Jin's southern capital. Wanyan Liang also tried to suppress dissent by killing Jurchen nobles, executing 155 princes. To fulfill his dream of becoming the ruler of all China, Wanyan Liang attacked the southern Song dynasty in 1161. Meanwhile, 2 simultaneous rebellions erupted in Shangjing, at the Jurchen's former power base, led by Wanyan Liang's cousin, soon-to-be crowned Wanyan Yong, and the other of Khitan tribesmen. Wanyan Liang had to withdraw Jin troops from southern China to quell the uprisings. The Jin forces were defeated by Song forces in the Battle of Kaishi and Battle of Tangdao. With a depleted military force, Wanyan Liang failed to make headway in his attempted invasion of the southern Song dynasty. Finally, he was assassinated by his own generals in December 1161, due to his defeats. His son and heir was also assassinated in the capital. Although crowned in October, Wanyan Yong was not officially recognized as emperor until the murder of Wanyan Liang's heir. The Khitan uprising was not suppressed until 1164, their horses were confiscated so that the rebels had to take up farming. Other Khitan and Zai cavalry units had been incorporated into the Jin army. Because these internal uprisings had severely weakened the Jin's capacity to confront the southern Song militarily, the Jin court under Emperor Shizong began negotiating for peace. The Treaty of Longxing was signed in 1164 and ushered in more than 40 years of peace between the two empires. In the early 1180s, Emperor Shizong instituted a restructuring of 200 Mengan units to remove tax abuses and help Jurchens. Communal farming was encouraged. The Jin Empire prospered and had a large surplus of grain in reserve. Although learned in Chinese classics, Emperor Shizong was also known as a promoter of Jurchen language and culture. During his reign, a number of Chinese classics were translated into Jurchen. The Imperial Jurchen Academy was founded, and the imperial examinations started to be offered in the Jurchen language. Emperor Shizong's reign was remembered by the posterity as the time of comparative peace and prosperity, and the emperor himself was compared to the mythological rulers Yao and Shun. Poor Jurchen families in the Southern Routes Battalion and company households try to live the lifestyle of wealthy Jurchen families and avoid doing farming work by selling their own Jurchen daughters into slavery and renting their land to Han tenants. The wealthy Jurchens feasted and drank and wore damask and silk. The history of Jin says that Emperor Shizong of Jin took note and attempted to halt these things in 1181. Emperor Shizong's grandson, Emperor Zhangzong, venerated Jurchen values, but he also immersed himself in Han Chinese culture and married an ethnic Han Chinese woman. The Taihe Code of Law was promulgated in 1201 and was based mostly on the Tang Code. In 1207, the Southern Song dynasty attempted an invasion, but the Jin forces effectively repulsed them. In the peace agreement, the Song dynasty had to pay higher annual indemnities and behead Han Tuozhou, the leader of the hawkish faction in the Song imperial court. Fall of Jin. Starting from the early 13th century, the Jin dynasty began to feel the pressure of Mongols from the north. Genghis Khan first led the Mongols into western Xia territory in 1205 and ravaged it 4 years later. In 1211 about 50,000 Mongol horsemen invaded the Jin Empire and began absorbing Khitan and Jurchen rebels. The Jin had a large army with 150,000 cavalry but abandoned the western capital Datong. The next year the Mongols went north and looted the Jin eastern capital, and in 1213 they besieged the central capital, Dongdu. In 1214 the Jin made a humiliating treaty but retained the capital. That summer, Emperor Xuanzong abandoned the central capital and moved the government to the southern capital Kaifeng, making it the official seat of the Jin dynasty's power. In 1216, a hawkish faction in the Jin imperial court persuaded Emperor Xuanzong to attack the Song dynasty, but in 1219 they were defeated at the same place by the Yangtze River where Wanyan Liang had been defeated in 1161. The Jin dynasty now faced a two-front war that they could not afford. Furthermore, Emperor Aizong won a succession struggle against his brother and then quickly ended the war and went back to the capital. He made peace with the Tanks of Western Xia, who had been allied with the Mongols. The Jurchen Jin Emperor Wanyan Yongji's daughter, Jurchen Princess Quigo, was married to Mongol leader Genghis Khan in exchange for relieving the Mongol siege upon Dongdu in the Mongol conquest of the Jin dynasty. Many Han Chinese and Khitans defected to the Mongols to fight against the Jin dynasty. 2 Han Chinese leaders, Shi Tianzi and Liu Heima, and the Khitan Xiao Zhala defected and commanded the 3 Tumans in the Mongol army. Liu Heima and Shi Tianzi served Genghis Khan's successor, Ogdi Khan. Liu Heima and Shi Shinshang led armies against Western Xia for the Mongols. There were 4 Han Tumans and 3 Khitan Tumans, with each Tuman consisting of 10,000 troops. The 3 Khitan generals Shimo Badier, Tabuyar, and Xiao Dongxi commanded the 3 Khitan Tumans, and the 4 Han generals Zhongru, Yan Shi, Shi Tianzi and Liu Heima commanded the 4 Han Tumans under Ogdi Khan. Shi Tianzi was a Han Chinese who lived under Jin rule. Interethnic marriage between Han Chinese and Jurchens became common at this time. His father was Shi Bingji. Shi Bingji married a Jurchen woman and a Han Chinese woman. It is unknown which of them was Shi Tianzi's mother. Shi Tianzi was married to 2 Jurchen women, a Han Chinese woman, and a Korean woman, and his son Shi Gang was born to one of his Jurchen wives. His Jurchen wives' surnames were Monian and Na, his Korean wife's surname was Li, and his Han Chinese wife's surname was Shi. Shi Tianzi defected to the Mongol forces upon their invasion of the Jin dynasty. His son, Shi Gang, married a Karaite woman. The Karaites were Mongolified Turkic people and considered as part of the Mongol nation. Shi Tianzi, Zhongru, Yan Shi and other Han Chinese who served in the Jin dynasty and defected to the Mongols helped build the structure for the administration of the new Mongol state. The Mongols created a Han army out of defected Jin troops, and another army out of defected Song troops called the newly submitted army. Genghis Khan died in 1227 while his armies were attacking Western Xia. His successor, Ogdi Khan, invaded the Jin dynasty again in 1232 with assistance from the southern Song dynasty. The Jurchens tried to resist, but when the Mongols besieged Kaifeng in 1233, Emperor Aizong fled south to the city of Keijo. A Song-Mongol allied army surrounded the capital, and the next year Emperor Aizong committed suicide by hanging himself to avoid being captured in the Mongols besieged Keijo, ending the Jin dynasty in 1234. The territory of the Jin dynasty was to be divided between the Mongols and the Song dynasty. However, due to lingering territorial disputes, the Song dynasty and the Mongols eventually went to war with one another over these territories. In Empire of the Steppes, René Grousset reports that the Mongols were always amazed at the valor of the Jurchen warriors, who held out until 7 years after the death of Genghis Khan.